down. We'll give your bottle of water back.
Okay. Well, what could they have?
I'm not.
Come on.
Okay. We can talk about this.
Okay, come on.
I'm not going anybody. Stand up.
Okay, come on.
Can you stand or not?
Yeah, I can stand. But
You can't stand?
What could they? Okay, come on, Lord. Come on.
You can talk to a lawyer when you're in jail. I'm not.
Come on. Okay.
We can talk about this.
Okay, come on.
I'm not going anybody. Stand up.
Okay, come on.
Can you stand or not?
Yeah, I can stand. But
You can't stand?
What could they? Okay, come on, Lord. Come on.
Stand up.
Okay. Well, yeah. Stand.
Stand?
No, I can't stand.
You just told me you could walk.
You just said
I
you could
can't
walk.
walk. Okay. Cash question.
Stand up. Stand up.
Cash question,
Are you going to stand up?
Hey, bro. Yeah, I ain't really. Hey, bro. Call my mama. I ain't doing nothing wrong. I ain't really.
Go down to the ground then.
Okay.
If you can't stand up, go to the ground.
What I did.
Go to the ground.
What I did, what my wrist?
Oh, you're walking.
What?
That's fine.
Yeah. What I did wrong?
Come on.
Are you going to walk or not?
What I did wrong?
Come on.
Are you going to walk or not?
Yeah, I'm walk. What I did wrong, though?
Cavender and another officer grab his arms, and Cavender asks Grant if he's going to get up. Because if he doesn't, Cavender appears to say to the other officer, "I'm going to tase him."
I told you have a warrant for your arrest.
One for my foot.
All right,
What I did?
Stop.
What I did?
Stop.
You
have a warrant for your arrest.
For what?
Stop resisting
For what?
or you're going to get tased.
I asked you a question.
I already told you you have a warrant for your arrest.
What
You're
arrest
making
for
this a
what?
lot harder.
Arrest for what?
You're about to get tased.
Arrest for what?
Grant says he'll get up. The other officer, who is not named in the news release, tells him to bring his legs in while they try to help him out of the wheelchair. Then, Grant tells them he can't walk. Cavender does not like this. He wants him to comply, even if he cannot.
I did nothing wrong.
You have a warrant for your arrest.
A warrant for my arrest. Arrest for what?
Hold on a second. Nope.
Arrest for what? A warrant for what? Call the captain. Arrest. I don't have no warrant. I ain't did nothing wrong. I got no warrant. I don't have no warrant. Yes, ma'am. I ain't got no problem. I ain't over here. I ain't bucking, man.
All right, stand behind your back.
Okay.
Put it behind your back.
Okay, what's it? Please, I ain't did nothing wrong. I ain't did nothing wrong.
Put your hand behind your back.
Where am I? Okay, I'll put my hand behind my back.
Do it then.
Put your hand behind your back.
What I did, man? What I did, I'm not resisting. Please. Okay, I'm not resisting.
Cavender arrested Grant on a charge of resisting an officer with violence, a felony, according to court records. He wrote that Grant was unwilling to allow officers to handcuff him. At no point does Grant hurt or threaten to hurt the officers, according to the video, which is the standard in Florida law for that charge.
Tasing a man in a wheelchair. This happened on June 20th last year. The officer's supervisor reviewed the use of force plus the body camera video of the incident and then forwarded it on to an internal investigation.
The moment doesn't begin with chaos. It begins with certainty. Certainty on one side that this interaction will end the same way it always does. Certainty on the other that something is already wrong but not yet defined. The officer's voice is steady, not raised, not rushed. The kind of calm that signals control rather than reassurance. The commands arrive early before understanding has a chance to form. They stack on top of one another, compressing the space between words and consequence. The man in front of them does not match the script the commands assume. His body does not respond the way it's being ordered to. That mismatch is not treated as information. It's treated as defiance. From the outside, the scene still looks manageable. No shouting, no crowd, no urgency that would justify speed, but internally, the decision tree is already narrowing. He asks questions, not challenges, not speeches, just questions that seek orientation. Each one lands unanswered, not because answers are unavailable, but because answers would slow the process down. The language shifts almost imperceptibly, from explanation to repetition, from repetition to warning. The tone remains even, which gives the warnings weight without emotion. Calm threats sound official. They sound final. The chair becomes central to the scene, not as a medical reality, but as a problem to be solved. It anchors him in place. It also anchors the officer's frustration. What cannot be moved becomes an obstacle. They tell him to do something his body cannot do. When he says this, it does not register as limitation. It registers as refusal. This is where control begins to slip, not away from the officers, but away from the facts. The situation is no longer about what is possible, it's about what is demanded. The threat appears early, not as a last resort, but as leverage. It hangs in the air longer than necessary, shaping every second that follows. There is still time here. Time to pause, time to reassess, time to adjust. None of it is taken. Instead, the encounter tightens, commands shorten, explanations disappear. The exchange becomes transactional, comply or suffer the consequence. He continues to ask why. The question never lands. The response is always backward-looking, rooted in authority rather than circumstance. The officers move closer. Proximity replaces dialogue. Physical presence becomes a substitute for clarity. At this stage, the imbalance is unmistakable. One side controls tools, space, and escalation. The other controls only his voice, and even that is losing effectiveness. The warnings repeat. Each one strips away another option. Stand up, move, comply. Each command assumes a capacity that does not exist. The refusal to acknowledge that reality is not loud, it's procedural. That makes it harder to interrupt. There's a brief moment where the outcome could still change. Not because anyone says the right thing, but because nothing irreversible has happened yet. That window closes quietly. The device comes into frame, not deployed, not activated, just present. Its presence alone shifts the balance completely. From here on, every second is loaded. Every movement risks triggering the consequence that has already been named. The man's voice changes. Not louder, more urgent. He says he will comply, but his body still cannot match the demand. Words and motion are out of sync. This is where inevitability settles in. Not announced, just understood. The officers no longer need agreement. They only need justification, and justification has already been constructed. The moment stretches, not because anyone hesitates, but because the system is waiting for compliance that will never come. When the action finally happens, it does not feel sudden, it feels scheduled. The escalation is not chaotic, it is methodical, calm, almost routine. That is what makes it unbearable. Because by the time force is applied, the outcome has already been decided. The interaction has crossed from enforcement into punishment. Without ever naming the transition, this is the point of no return. Not because of what happens next, but because nothing that follows can undo what has already been chosen. After the first deployment, the scene changes shape but not direction. Sound becomes sharper, movements become smaller. Time fractures into seconds that feel longer than they should. What's striking is not the reaction of the officers, but the absence of one. There is no pause, no reassessment, no recalibration. The process continues as if the escalation confirmed something rather than disrupted it. The man's body reacts in ways he cannot control. This is treated as resistance. The interpretation hardens immediately. Commands resume. Louder now, but not clearer. The expectation remains unchanged despite the new reality on the ground. The second use follows the first without meaningful separation. The justification has already been accepted internally. Each application reinforces the next. There is still no attempt to adjust the approach, no recognition that compliance might look different here. The goal remains the same, even as the means become more severe. Observers later will argue about seconds, about positioning, about phrasing. In the moment, none of that matters. What matters is momentum, and momentum belongs entirely to the officers. The man continues to speak. His words fracture under strain, but they don't disappear. He is still trying to explain, even as his body is being overwhelmed. The officers focus on the same instruction: hands, movement, positioning. The repetition is relentless. This is no longer about achieving control. Control has already been asserted. This is about enforcing submission. Each subsequent action feels less like a response and more like continuation, a sequence that does not require new justification once it has begun. The device is used again and again. Each time, the gap between command and consequence shrinks. What's missing here is anger. There is no shouting match, no visible loss of temper. That absence makes the scene colder. Force applied without emotion carries a different weight. It suggests inevitability rather than impulse. The man's vulnerability is fully visible now, not hidden, not ambiguous, it is undeniable, and yet it does not alter the response. At this point, the encounter is no longer about arrest, it's about completion, finishing what was started. The charge that will follow begins to take shape here, not in paperwork, but in narrative. Resistance becomes the explanation that absorbs everything else. His inability to comply is folded into that narrative without distinction. Eventually, the physical struggle subsides, not because the approach changed, but because the body can no longer respond. Only then does the scene slow. The officers regain a conversational tone, the urgency drains out. The escalation ends not with resolution, but with exhaustion. From the outside, it might look like the situation is under control. Inside the frame, something irreversible has already happened. What remains is aftermath, pain, disorientation, silence broken only by instructions that come too late to matter. The language shifts again, back to procedure, back to normalcy, as if the previous minutes were an anomaly rather than the logical result of earlier choices. This is where the system reasserts itself. Reports will be written, actions will be categorized, words like resistance will appear without context. The footage will later speak for itself, but not immediately. In the moment, authority is unchallenged. The man is moved, the scene clears, life resumes around them. The street does not remember what just happened. The building does not change. The officers move on to the next call. But the record exists now, quietly, permanently. And that record tells a different story than the one that will be claimed. Because what happened here was not a failure of communication. It was a failure of adjustment, a refusal to adapt when adaptation was required. And once force replaced judgment, there was no path back. The consequences do not arrive immediately. They rarely do. At first, there is only recovery, physical, incomplete, painful, emotional, harder to measure, the kind that lingers without visible markers. The system moves faster than the healing process. Reviews begin, statements are issued, language becomes careful. What is examined is not the man's condition, but the officer's adherence to protocol. The question becomes whether the steps were followed, not whether they made sense. The footage changes that conversation, slowly, uneasily. Viewed without sound, the imbalance is unmistakable. Viewed with it, the gap between command and capability becomes impossible to ignore. Public attention arrives next, not all at once, in waves. Each viewing adds pressure, not because it introduces new facts, but because it refuses to let the old ones settle. The narrative that once felt secure begins to fray. Words like resistance lose their grip when paired with images that contradict them. The charge is reconsidered, adjusted, softened. Language shifts again. This is how systems correct themselves, not by admission, but by revision. The officer is removed from active duty, temporarily. The phrasing matters. It suggests neutrality while acknowledging disruption. Investigations proceed behind closed doors. The pace is deliberate. The distance between decision makers and consequences widens. For the man at the center of it all, time moves differently. Recovery is not linear. Neither is resolution. The lawsuit becomes the next arena. Not because justice was served on the street, but because it wasn't. This is where the imbalance flips, slightly. Authority must now answer questions it previously ignored. The footage becomes evidence. The calm tone that once signaled control now reads as indifference. The repetition of commands becomes inflexibility. What was once framed as compliance enforcement is reframed as excessive force. Not because of one decision, but because of the accumulation of many small ones. The settlement figure is large enough to acknowledge harm, not large enough to undo it. The system absorbs the cost. The department continues operating. Training materials may change, or they may not. The officer's career is altered, not erased, adjusted. This is how accountability often looks: partial, delayed, incomplete. What remains most clearly is the footage itself, unedited, unargued, simply present. It does not shout, it does not explain, it shows. And what it shows is a moment where flexibility was possible, but authority chose rigidity instead. That choice reverberates beyond the individuals involved. It settles into precedent, into memory, into expectation. For others watching, especially those whose bodies do not conform, the message is clear without being spoken. Compliance is expected, capability is assumed. Difference is treated as defiance. The encounter becomes a reference point, not because it was unique, but because it was familiar. And familiarity is the most dangerous part. Because when these moments become routine, they stop being questioned until the cost becomes impossible to ignore. This time, the cost was documented. Next time, the outcome will depend on whether anyone remembers this one, not as outrage, not as spectacle, but as a quiet warning about what happens when authority refuses to adjust. even when adjustment is the only humane option left.